All
Is that
right. Well,
spirit fingers?
yeah, spirit finger away. I should be doing this one like next, you know.
Oh man.
I don't give away all the secrets now, though, dude. I mean, come on.
We, we dance our way into the vivisection this week.
I'm waiting for you to like dab your way in.
There we go.
Mm.
I'm not that hip. I'm not that up on the pop.
It's for the
pop
younger
culture
crowd,
trends.
for the new age.
That's from that Calvin Newton guy, right?
Oh, you don't. You're not a football guy, huh?
I'm not.
I used to watch a ton of football, but I have given up a lot of my extra sports watching outside MMA because otherwise I would do nothing but watch sports all the time, which I got other shit to do. Believe it or not.
Hey, that's why it's there, man. It's the bread and circus, right?
It's true. All right, this is the MMA Vivisection. Thoroughly derailed already before we started. We are talking Bellator 151, Warren versus Caldwell. I am joined by my esteemed co-hosts Victor Rodriguez and Eddie Mercado. You guys ready to talk about this card? It's actually, I gotta say, this is a solid Bellator card.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. This is, if we saw a little more of what we're seeing on this card in the event that we saw 2 weeks ago with Kimbo Dada, I think I would have been a much happier customer. But obviously we can't complain too much. Those, presumably, from what we can gather so far, that kind of crazy freak show spectacle at the top is what's giving them the ratings for them to bankroll, hopefully, shows like this, packed with a lot of the homegrown talent, a lot of the legitimate talent, some really good fighters matched up in some really great circumstances. So this has more compelling matchups than you might think, and it's a shame that it's under the radar, but it's definitely worth your time.
Eddie, your thoughts?
I'm excited for this card. I feel like it's Prospect City. I mean, we have multiple prospects. We even have some prospects pitted against one another, kind of a crossroads to see who's going to be the next up-and-comer and who's going to kind of be a gatekeeper, so to speak. So I think there's some good relevance here, and there's some good stylistic matchups, and I'm excited for it. I think it's a pretty good card.
Yeah, it's definitely it's got a lot of fun fighters and in a lot of good matchups and something I'm interested in too. You know, it has what I like to see more of on Bellator cards and haven't been seeing a lot of recently, which is fighters on the undercard that look like they have some momentum. Like, I don't need to see I don't expect big names on the undercard. I'm not expecting guys to be recognizable or somebody that I've been paying attention to. But I at least want to like glance at it and see a bunch of guys who only have a couple losses or are undefeated and are, look like they could be making waves in the future rather than a bunch of guys who have 50-50 records who are just going to put on a fight that is going to be immediately forgotten.
So what you're saying is you don't want to see a bunch of Bobos.
Yes, exactly. And so, we're not going to get into a lot of the fights on this undercard, but, guys like Justin Patterson versus Chance Rencontre, I don't know how to say that name. I'm just going to slaughter it.
Nailed it. Don't worry about it. You're good.
But, 6-1 versus 8-1, or Chris Jones at 10-3 versus Ray Wood at 6-1. These are the kind of fights I like to see on the undercard. They may not be name guys. They may not be guys that I've given any thought to at all. But if one of them puts on a really exciting performance, I can be like, hey, this is a dude that's not only winning, but just looked really good in this fight. Instead of, oh, wow, that was a cool performance. Oh, he's got a kind of record that ensures that he could be World Series of Fighting filler. So, on that note, there are a couple prelims we do want to talk about. The first being Steve Garcia versus Ricky Tercios.
Tercios?
Tercios? Yeah. Ricky Tercios? Whatever. These people, these American names that were obviously from other cultures that have very different ways of saying them. Fuck that. Like, that's not cool. Ricky, you're on my shit list to start out. But Eddie, why don't you talk about this fight?
It's not a good start for Ricky. No. I'm excited for this fight. These are two really young guys. Steve Garcia is only 23 years old, and Tercios can't be much older than that. Actually, he's younger. He's 22. So these are young kids here, but they're like a million miles an hour right out of the gate. Garcia is 6-0, 4-0 in Bellator, and man, he just for some reason his fists just find the chin. Like I don't, he's just one of those guys who has that laser precision in his punches. It might not be the prettiest, and it might be a little rough around the edges, but he can find the button. And Tercios is no slouch too. I mean, he's coming 1,000,000 miles out of the gate. So expect this fight to be real scrappy. I'll probably edge Garcia here just because he's been there before. You know, he has more experience under the bright lights. So I'm gonna pick Garcia, but I'm hoping for just a fun bantamweight fight.
Vic, thoughts?
Yeah, you know, the thing with Garcia is, and he is currently, his record stands at 6-0. I'm a little salty about that. I still think he should not have won that decision win against Kin Moy in Bellator a while ago. But that notwithstanding, he does have a tremendous amount of talent and a lot of heart. And most importantly, he has time. Hopefully, if he stays, you know, relatively injury-free and is brought along the right way, he has time to evolve into something that's, you know, really, really worth watching. And he already is worth watching as is. I'm wondering if just how much longer it's going to be before we see him on an actual main card for one of these Bellator events, because he has some very special abilities. You know, his defensive grappling is really pretty slick. His striking, his boxing is very clean, polished. He's got a lot of precision, as Eddie mentioned, and most importantly, his use of range. Now, problem is, in that fight that I just mentioned against Kin Moy, he took a lot of damage to the body, started slowing him down. You know, he started sort of making a few, I guess, questionable decisions in the moment in that fight. But as he's growing and maturing as a fighter, I think he's certainly going to do really, really well. And this fight against Tercios, I mean, there's not that much out there. He hasn't really fought the same level of opposition. He has fought some guys that are regional veterans, but they're not guys that were as advanced in that veteran status as some of the guys that Garcia has faced. So based on that, definitely you'd have to skew pretty heavy for Steve Garcia. But what I can definitely tell you is keep your eyes on this, because we could be seeing some interesting development in him as a fighter. And this could be, you know, it's good to see where he's at right now and where he can go from here.
All right, and there's no odds on that out yet. Usually there aren't much in the way of odds for Bellator prelims, so we can't offer you any advice on that gambling wise. But the other prelim I want to talk about, Neiman Gracie, Roger Carroll. You know, Carroll being a 500 vet, this looks kind of like a setup fight for Gracie to see if they can get him over as a talent that has people interested. Vic, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, here's the problem with this. Neiman Gracie, who's currently standing in as a professional at 3-0, all of his wins have been, as you might expect, the Gracie by submission. He had his first two fights in World Series of Fighting, and then eventually he had his last bout on the Newton versus McGarry fight. And, you know, he took out a guy who was, 3-1, I think it was, or something like that. So it's nice to see that at least Neiman Gracie isn't fighting guys that are, you know, 6-10 or, you know, 1-8. But at the same time, I don't know if this is too big a step up, because you're looking at a very experienced guy in Roger Carroll, who's fought some pretty interesting names. He is known for being pretty tough, and he just came off a very tough loss against Brennan Ward. Problem is that, you know, he's very he's not that easy to put away, put it that way. So hopefully, what we end up seeing here is a grappling match, and we get to see some real magic, because Carroll is definitely not a slouch. He seems to be one of those cats who integrates a lot more of his wrestling with his submissions as opposed to actual pure jiu-jitsu. So that could be fun. Otherwise, if it remains a striking battle, I don't really know how that can go. However, Neiman is one of those Henzo faction Gracies, I guess, that he's not resting exclusively on his jiu-jitsu. This guy's working on what he's got all around, and he's working with other dudes, presumably with people like Phil Nurse and guys in that network. So, yeah, I mean, I think Neiman Gracie is going to be okay. I mean, Carroll could certainly get him into a lot of trouble, but I'm hoping to see where Neiman's at in this and what kind of growth he's had between his last fight and this bout.
Your thoughts, Eddie?
I feel like Roger Carroll I mean, his strength is submissions. I mean, that's his bread and butter. Striking-wise, he doesn't have too much to offer. We saw that when he fought Brennan Ward. He had no business in that fight whatsoever. Problem is, I mean, Gracie, I mean, submissions is his thing. I mean, since coming out of the womb, he was armbarring people. So I kind of feel like this matchup is a good step up for Gracie in the sense that it is the most dangerous submission grappler he's faced yet. So it's like, okay, Gracie can run through, these guys real fast, submit them. Well, let's give him a veteran who has 15 submission wins, and let's see if he can run through him as well just as easily. There's no way these guys are going to stand there and trade. I mean, if they do, you better run for the hills because that's going to be ugly. But, I mean, I think Gracie, I think he should get the win here. I doubt there's odds, but I would probably put money on it just because I don't think I'd pick Roger Carroll to win much of anything as far as combat sports go, at least at this level. So I got to go Gracie. He's with Henzo doing his thing. I don't see Carroll with much of a shot here.
Well, this fight reminds me a lot of how you tend to see boxers get built, where they'll put a guy in where it's like, okay, now you're going to face a southpaw with a good jab, and you're going to have to figure out how to fight a southpaw with a good jab, or, now this guy's got a good left hook, so we're going to put you in here with him, and you're going to have to figure out how to fight against a guy with a good left hook. And these are fights that you win. You're supposed to win. They've been set up for you to win, but it's somebody that you have to work against in a very particular way that helps evolve your game. And this feels like that kind of fight to me, where it's like, okay, well, now let's throw you in with a guy who's all submissions, and, that's your game too, but he's going to be tough, he's experienced, and you got to go out there and you got to show that you can out-grapple him. So it feels very much like you're building a prospect for, as an eventual showcase fighter, which I got to imagine that Bellator would like to be able to invest in Gracie. So no, that's the undercard bouts worth talking about. Like I say, unusually for Bellator, there are undercard bouts we're talking about, and there are a couple others that look like they could be interesting fights where somebody could maybe show up and do something, but nothing huge we're going to get into. So let's jump up to the main card now, and the first main card bout, Joe Taimanglo versus Sirwan Kakai. Eddie?
Okay, there's something weird going on with Kakai. He was released from the UFC after a 1-1 skid, and it's like, I'm not exactly sure why they released him. Maybe too many fighters, or
I can tell you what what I heard, which is that this was right when they were doing their big purge. They decided, which they did last fall, and they were just dumping as many guys as they could to get their numbers lower. They cut like 50 guys or something. And what Kakai was told, I believe, was that they were operating on a first in, first out policy, or last in, first out policy. So the guys they hired most recently were the most likely to get cut. And so he was one of the most recent signings, and he ended up being cut.
Yeah, I saw a little article with him where he was saying how, in his eyes, it was just that, he didn't want to take. He could have stayed, but he would have to wait for short notice fights, and that's not something he wants to do. That's not how you get put on, especially in this game. I mean, a training injury and you're done. So you need to get in and get as much money as you can while you can. So he went to Bellator, which he seems to enjoy. He's got a 4-fight deal, and he says there's more stability there because he knows how much money he's going to make in a year. It's easier to budget life that way. So he's a good talent, man. He's polished. I like his stand-up. Technically, he's pretty sound defensively and offensively. He's got pretty decent footwork. Sometimes a little too linear with his defense. He'll move back up, straight back sometimes, which, can leave him exposed. He's good, though, man. 6 submission wins. He's 12-3. Never been finished. And he had an impressive showing in the UFC. I mean, he had a very entertaining fight with Danny Martinez where they stood there and they traded, and the third round was exciting. They just stood there and, and just knucked. And then he fought Frankie Saenz, who is number 13 ranked fighter in the UFC, and lost a very close split decision. I mean, you could make the argument that he beat Frankie Saenz. He's got a really mean cross. He's got nice knees. He's got exceptional timing. A knock, though, he kind of lets guys hang around longer than they should, I feel like. I think he has the ability to just starch people and get them out of there early, but he kind of lets them off the hook sometimes. And the guy he's fighting, Baby Joe, he's just this little Tasmanian devil. He's 5'4", and he's not the most technical guy, but he's got probably the most heart. And he makes up for that lack of technique with his aggression and with his intensity. And he's got heavy hands. I mean, he will knock you out. And there's not many guys at 135 with that kind of power. He will shoot in on you. He will set up a couple takedowns here and there. He is a little bit hittable at times due to the lapses in his technique. But he's exciting to watch. But I just think Kakai is a little too polished for him. And I think the counter punching and footwork of Kakai will be able to withstand a couple bombs, and I think he'll get the job done. So I got to go Kakai.
All right, Vic, your thoughts?
All right. Well, here's what's interesting about this bout is how a guy as talented as Kakai taking on someone who's hasn't gotten as much fanfare in his Bellator time as Taimanglo. Taimanglo's got that stout, I guess, body type that seems to favor him well because he seems to, I don't know if it's just the way he throws his punches or what, but he hits pretty heavy. He's got those pretty big fists. He just nails dudes and ends up creating opportunities for himself to start grappling from there. So, I don't know. Kakai's a very crafty grappler. He's very confident in his abilities on the ground. He feels he can hang with anybody, and he's shown a lot of he's shown just a lot of really clever escapes and reversals on the ground as well, which you don't really see too many people actually going for sweeps in MMA. You usually see somebody going for like a lazy leg lock Shogun style, trying to just like, hey, maybe he'll let go if I do this. But Kakai's game being adapted for MMA seems to be a lot better than it is for most people. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when it hits the ground. Striking, though, I do think he's got much more of a bit of a speed advantage. His movement seems a little better, but Taimanglo's timing is really, really, really good. So if it stays in the grappling department, I'd certainly favor Kakai. If it stays striking, and especially if it gets a little later on in the fight, Taimanglo could very well put him away with strikes.
So your pick?
That's a tough one, man. I really like Kakai, but I think I'm going to go with Taimanglo on this one.
Wow.
Indeed.
I'm surprised.
I gotta say, one of the big reasons I would pick Kakai here is that where he's absolutely at his best is in scrambles and in transitions, and that's where his striking is at its best too. And that's something that I think he can really press a big advantage over Taimanglo there. And just, when this gets into clinches, when they're in scrambles, things like that, Kakai is going to be the dude who's jumping on stuff, finding angles, and finding hard shots to land. So
I think it's crazy going from Frankie Saenz to Baby Joe Taimanglo. Like that's insane.
Bellator was just really happy to jump on him the moment he hit the market. They were knocking on his door.
Fucking A. I mean, he's a serious polished talent here.
They should have.
Especially if they slow play him, like, man, he's going to be fighting for the title soon.
Yes. I was just about to say pretty much that. If they develop him properly, this was an excellent signing. A great coup.
Which Vic then feels that they have not. So watch out, Sirwan, because you're walking into the lion's den here.
Come on.
Kakai is the underdog, minus 370 to minus 400. Joe Taimanglo is the underdog, plus 325 to plus 270. That brings us to a top prospect fight for Bellator, Bubba Jenkins versus Goiti Yamauchi. Vic, what are your thoughts?
Ooh, wow. Oh, okay. Yamauchi's got a really, really good submission game. And the most interesting thing about him is how he progresses. Like, you kind of see more or less where he's going with things as he's about to do them. The problem is that when you deal with the defensive wrestling that he's faced, that fight against Will Martinez really exposed a lot of the flaws in his game because he took on a guy who not only was a jiu-jitsu black belt who was very aware of what Yamauchi brought to the table, but he also kept that top pressure game so strong. And even at the points where he was able to get up and sort of just, grab his feet and come back on top and keep working him and keep sort of exhausting him to grind out a win. I don't know if Yamauchi's really – I don't know if he shored up his defenses enough to improve his game from what happened in that fight to a guy who's an NCAA caliber wrestler. Now, granted, Bubba Jenkins has shown – an ability to be submitted, as we saw he got slept by Karahanyan. I don't know how much longer I'm willing to hold that over his head. He's not a dumb guy. The guy is a pretty clever fighter. And I do think that if he's able to keep that smothering top pressure and he is able to hit some pretty solid, hard shots, as strong as he is, as careful as he is with his ground striking, I can see Bubba Jenkins, grinding out a decision but beating him up pretty ugly in the process.
All right, Eddie, your thoughts?
Bubba Jenkins from Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Oh, that's right.
First Colonial High School, 757 on the map. I'm super excited for this fight. These are two hot prospects. I still consider Bubba Jenkins a prospect.
There's no reason not to. He hasn't been fighting that long.
Yeah, I mean, he's had some ugly setbacks, two of them, but, that was early in his career, and I think he was smart enough to learn from those. Yeah. Yamauchi, oh my goodness. He absolutely destroyed Kobayashi. I mean, I did not see that coming. I mean, I picked him to win, but I didn't think he was going to win like that. I mean, he dominated him everywhere. I mean, Kobayashi did not have a moment in that fight whatsoever. He also got dropped in the third round with a straight left. I mean, it was a complete mopping. Man, Yamauchi he's just such a phenomenal grappler. His jiu-jitsu is just wicked. He'll bail on subs and gain the dominant position or use it as a sweep. I mean, I just like the guy. I like his combos are nice. His kicks are fast. Bubba Jenkins, his striking is not, it's not, you can't say it's quite polished, but it's definitely serviceable. And we saw that against Jordan Parsons in the second stanza where he kicked him in the head and made him do the stanky leg. I was stoked. I was like, damn right, Bubba, like, get your striking on, I really would have loved to see Bubba put him away after that, get a little bit of separation and rain down some bows or something. But this is a close fight. But when it's all said and done, I feel like Yamauchi is extremely comfortable on his back, even to the point where he will pull guard. And I kind of feel like that's not a good look against the NCAA. Division I wrestler. I feel like that top pressure might just be a little too much. Yamauchi will be a little too comfortable, and I think Jenkins has learned his lesson from that Karakanyan loss to where he'll mind his P's and Q's, and I can see, I wouldn't be surprised if Jenkins wins by slam here, honestly. I wouldn't. The way he picked up Jordan Parsons and slammed him, I mean, I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility.
It's not, because Yamauchi's a pretty slender dude, too, so it's...
And that's another thing. I mean, Yamauchi isn't exactly huge for 145, whereas Bubba Jenkins, I mean, he cuts a decent amount of weight, as most wrestlers do. So I'm going to pick Bubba Jenkins here. Hopefully he'll get a finish, but Bubba Jenkins for the win.
Interesting thing to me here is that this is a crossroads fight for two guys that basically represent the prototypical prospects that Bellator is looking to sign, which are a flashy, aggressive Brazilian with an overly inflated record and a NCAA Division All-American wrestler, Division I All-American wrestler who had almost no MMA experience coming into Bellator.
Is Yamauchi Brazilian or Japanese? What's going on here?
He's both. He's of Japanese descent, but he's Brazilian, much like Machida or Augusto Sakai. Yeah,
he was actually born in Japan, but he grew up in Brazil.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a pretty large Japanese community, or not
Yeah,
large, a sizable Japanese community in Brazil. So you'll see more of these guys.
yeah, but Jenkins. So to that extent, like these are the two kind of guys that Bellator loves because they can get them, I think, relatively cheap, and they can bring them all the way up from unknown to potential headliners. And this is the fight that decides which of these two guys right now is gonna actually break through and like be ready for another big, to take a big fight. And it's tough because Jenkins, I mean, yeah, we know he's a dominating wrestler, but being just a wrestler these days is like I think it's become the toughest way to go ahead in MMA. Where like if you're not a also a great grappler or also a great striker, people know, guys who are good at submissions know the takedown's coming and they can find a submission. Guys who are good at striking know the takedown's coming. They can eat you up with strikes. Yamauchi could be one of those guys who, if Jenkins just gets predictable, he'll be right there waiting for him. But at the same time, Yamauchi's also one of those guys that, like, kind of not bad at anything, not great at anything.
I think he's a great grappler. His jiu-jitsu is great. I think that's safe to say.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Will Martinez kind of locked him down.
He did, but that's
But he's
I don't
also
know.
22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
The experience gap is a factor, and also the fact that Will's grappling for MMA is better along at his age now, or at least since he's done fighting, but than it would be for Yamauchi at that point in time. So that's also a thing. The experience thing and the fight IQ kind of have to be factored in.
yeah, I'm just saying that. Yeah, I mean, we're talking Yamauchi. That was 4 years into his career. Like, Yamauchi's had a lot of experience. He's not raw.
Right, but I mean, he still has that,
He's
that
a
young
good
adult body.
grappling is probably, yes, grappling is what Yamauchi's best at, but I wouldn't say that Yamauchi's just like the grappler to end all grapplers in MMA. He's not Damian Maia out there.
Oh, fuck yeah, for sure. For sure.
He's solid, he's good, he will fight well, but it could also be that Bubba Jenkins could just get on top of him and lock him down. Like, that's the battle. I think that's the key battle here, and it'll be a question. It's a big question mark for me because I kind of think I have to go with Yamauchi in this case. I kind of don't think that Jenkins can lock him down, and if he can't, I don't think Jenkins can outstrike him, and I don't think he can stay ahead of him grappling.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Yamauchi is the more complete fighter here. I think that's the fair assessment here.
Very, yes.
So I'm going to pick Yamauchi to win this, and this will be another setback for Jenkins, personally. The odds have Jenkins as the underdog, plus 169 down to plus 130. Yamauchi, the favorite, minus 175 to minus 200.
You know what's crazy? This is Bubba Jenkins' 10th Bellator fight.
Yeah, he's been there since the beginning. They brought him along slow, except in these big flashes, except for that Caracanian fight where they were like, okay, fuck it, we'll just throw you in against a dude who's going to win.
Wow.
Whatever.
I had no idea. I don't even remember, like, past maybe the Sean Bunch fight. I don't remember any of his other fights, I think it was.
There was
I think it was a Burley
fight,
yeah.
Obviously, which was really early on in his Bellator career.
Okay.
But otherwise, they've kept him buried on the prelims, and they've kept him with a steady diet of like slow builds, But
I think he's also still has faced probably better competition than Yamauchi.
Yeah, probably.
At least with Caracanian.
Well, within Bellator, I'd say so, yes. I
would actually say that Yamauchi has consistently faced better competition, but that Bubba Jenkins has faced better individual fighters. I would say that most of the fighters that Yamauchi has faced have been of a higher quality than most of the fighters Jenkins has faced, but he hasn't yet had to face somebody like George Caracanian. All right. On that note, we now have Fernando Gonzalez versus Gilbert Smith. This is the co-main event.
Hmm. All right. So, you may remember Gilbert Smith when he tried to join the UFC as a. Oh, really, Bug? Really? Now that I start talking, really? Oh, Jesus. All right. He was on the Ultimate Fighter on the Uriah Hall season. I don't remember which number, so sue me. He's replacing Michael Venom Page, who was supposed to fight Fernando Gonzalez in what would be still an interesting bout. Quiet. And currently 12-4, 7 submissions on his record. Very, very underrated with his jiu-jitsu. He is mostly a Todd control guy. I believe he wrestled in the past, and that pretty much is what shows in his game. He just won by TKO against former UFC veteran Bristol Marunde back in October, and he's currently on a 2-fight win streak. The previous win was an armbar win. He does have losses to Bubba McDaniel, who was, I think that was the tough finale. And Bug, what are you doing? And Brian Foster, currently in World Series of Fighting by unanimous decision. He did suffer a loss against Chidi Njokuani, younger brother of Anthony Njokuani, who was lethal with his striking. So some of the guys that he's lost to have been really, really solid guys. That they've just been they've probably just been too much for him. Now in comes a guy like Gonzalez, who's got a bit of a career resurgence, I guess you could say. He's currently on a 4-fight win streak. Including wins over Carl Amasu, Carl Parisian, Marius Zaromskis, and his last win, which was a submission against Kurt Millender. He's had losses earlier against Hiromitsu Miura from the WEC, Brent Cooper, and alpha male veteran Dave Mitchell, but I don't really think I can hold that against him right now. I think he's really found a good home for his left hand. His defensive wrestling has looked a hell of a lot better. And it's a little confusing because you look at Gonzalez, his body does not scream professional athlete. He seems really like a dude who just works at a furniture store, but this dude is really very durable. His cardio isn't bad. It's not exceptional, but he's not going to gas out easily. And he's just a lot stronger than he looks, and it shows in the way that he defends and the way that he kind of handles some of his opponents. So good luck to Gilbert Smith getting it to the ground, because I think that's really where he may have more of an advantage. And even still, Gonzalez isn't a slouch because he's got 7 submissions on his record, and his submission defense is pretty decent too. 9 of his victories have been finishes due to strikes, whether they're knockouts or TKOs. So Gonzalez has that working for him as well. If the fight stays standing, he could very well make, I don't want to say quick work necessarily of Gilbert Smith, but certainly put a hurting on him. This could very well steal the show, I think. I think we could see something pretty crazy if Gonzalez gets a wild knockout. Other than that, it could just be pretty slow plotting, guys leaning against each other and up on the cage. But I think Gonzalez has more ways to win. I think he's got a bit more upside in his bout.
All right, Eddie, your thoughts?
Man, this is an interesting clash of styles here, I feel like. You got Gonzalez, who, if you look at his record, it's so weird how anytime he's a Gladiator Challenge guy, right? Mm-hmm. Anytime he came outside of that, he lost. Until he comes to Bellator, and then he makes this run. I mean, beating guys like Carroll Parisian in 1:43, just completely put some hands on him, dropped him. Marius Zaromskis, he went toe-to-toe with that fool and put it on him. And Zaromskis is no slouch on the feet by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
So, I mean, he looked really impressive. And then, on top of that, in his next performance, he's fighting Curtis Millender. I know that's your boy's name. And he proved that you need more than just athleticism to beat this guy. Like, you can't just get over on him by being a good athlete. And he's tough as nails. He's got this swarmer style where he just, comes forward, crowds you, and just starts punching the shit out of you. I mean, he's willing to eat a few punches to get inside. He's not afraid to get hit, and he hits pretty hard, as we saw. He's hurting people. And this past September, I believe, he went toe-to-toe with Paul Daly in that Dynamite the Bellator Dynamite series. Yeah. Let's not forget about that. I mean, he stood right in front of Paul Daly, took everything he had, and gave some right back, which I thought was very impressive.
And he's not even a kickboxer either in any sense.
Yeah, no. I mean, he's pretty much just a boxer, really. But man, he's got that deceptive body. It doesn't look like a professional athlete, like Vic was saying, but man, he comes forward. The guy he's fighting, Gilbert Smith, former RFA champion, or I guess still RFA champion, however that works. He's been 5 rounds before. He's got the conditioning, although he's so swole and built that he doesn't look like he could go that long, but for some reason he does. He can be controlled a little bit, held against the cage at times. He's hittable at times as well. We've seen him get hurt a couple times in that Chidi Njokuani fight. We saw him get dropped with a jab in the 2nd round of that fight. So also against Bristol Morunde, we saw him get hurt a couple times in that one, although he did come back and break Bristol's jaw, which was impressive with that rear hook. So I don't know. You got this guy with the slugger style versus this guy with the swarmer style as far as stand-up goes. And when that happens, I mean, a lot of the times it's going to go to the slugger with the heavier hands because you got the swarmer who's willing to eat a couple punches to get inside, but if those couple punches are bolos, I mean, that's not going to bode well for Gonzalez. So this is a tough one. I've noticed a trend lately of RFA champions coming into Bellator and losing. We saw that with Daniel Pineda, Francisco France. So maybe there's something there. I don't know. But I feel like Gonzalez has the momentum behind him. But I'm going to go with Smith just because I think that if he throws heavy punching combinations, he can hurt Gonzalez and maybe get the victory. So I'm going to go Smith here. But I can definitely see Gonzalez putting hands on him.
I gotta admit, I think I'm leaning for Gonzalez just because he's the exact idea of that guy who, if you stick at something long enough, you eventually get good at it, even though you may not have any of the tools for it naturally. Where he just kind of like, I'm gonna fight MMA, and it was like, well, that's not a very good idea, and he just kept doing it until. Now he's actually like, he's still he has that thing where like he's still ultra durable, so he's got a bunch of crafty tricks that he's learned over the years, and he's still ultra durable.
Oh God, it's funny to me because it's like you're describing me doing jiu-jitsu. It's like almost to the letter.
And so I feel like I should pick him to beat Smith here, just because I don't feel like Smith, like, I don't know, Smith kind of feels like the opposite, where it's like he either totally like overwhelms you with these major, with athleticism or these huge moves and these major points of offense, or he's just gonna get like picked apart and outworked by the better technical guy, the guy who can actually be patient and doesn't panic. And I feel like Gonzalez is enough of that guy to win this fight.
Do we have any odds for?
Yes. The odds on this fight: Gilbert Smith is the favorite, -140 to -165. Fernando Gonzalez, the underdog, +138 down to +120 or 115.
No, I meant, do we have any odds for whether or not Gonzalez passes his post-fight test? Because he loves that ganja.
Yeah, that would not surprise me either.
But this fight's in Oklahoma, so he doesn't have that pass that California would give him.
Indeed.
Yeah.
They're in classic King of the Cage country, Thackerville, Oklahoma.
Real quick, let me propose this real fast. Let's say Page was still in the fight. Would everyone be picking Page to win here? That tells me all I wanted to hear.
He'd have a very tough go of it. That's pretty much all I can say.
I would pick Page to win, but I would be very, very tentative. It would be exactly the kind of fight I expect Michael Page to lose.
You think that's why he pulled out?
What?
You think that's why he pulled out?
I don't know. I doubt it.
Page is starting to pull out of fights more than anybody else in MMA, almost Khabib level.
I never tend to assume that a dude's pulling out of a fight because he doesn't think he can win it.
Well, I'm not saying he pulled out. Maybe his team was like, hey, let's sit this one out.
Well, wouldn't his team have told him not to sign for the agreement in the first place? Like, I don't I don't see how that. I mean, I
Well,
don't know. I suppose it's possible. This is a crazy sport.
if he hadn't signed for the fight and they announced it, it could still be
Oh,
considered pulling out.
yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
But anyway, however what you slice it, I would pick Page, and I would be not at all shocked if he ended up losing. Brings us to the main event: Joe Warren, Darrion Caldwell. Eddie, what are your thoughts?
I think I am insanely excited for this fight. You got two accredited wrestlers about to go at it. One of them, Darrion Caldwell, is an up-and-comer. He's a hot prospect. I mean, he's so explosive, so athletic. He's 5'10", so he's going to have a significant height advantage in this. He's only been fighting since 2012, but he is 8-0, 5-0 in Bellator. He's a southpaw, and his striking is. You definitely can tell that he uses a lot of his athleticism at this point in his career to get through the striking phases. He will throw flashy strikes, but you can really see through that there's no sound fundamentals striking wise, and you see that as the fight goes on. A lot of times in the third round, you'll see as he gets a little more tired, his fundamentals just kind of they dwindle a bit. I still gotta say he's untested a bit. I think in his he fought Sean Bunch, who was a two-time All-American, and I think in that fight, I think they kind of wanted to see, well, what happens if your wrestling doesn't work? Can you go out and can you strike with someone, or can you, just clinch with someone, or what are you gonna do? But he was by far the better wrestler in that one, and I think you got Joe Warren, who is. I don't know. People count him out, and he's only 12-4, but I feel like he has more losses than that for some reason. I don't know why I get that feeling about him.
It's because those losses were compound. Those losses were just horrific. That's what. I mean.
Yeah.
Every time he loses, I don't want to get, I'll let you talk again in a minute, but I do feel like the only way Joe Warren loses is when it's huge. Like, you have to catch him with something big and flashy.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Warren does not lose decisions. Mm-hmm. He's been to the decision 9 times and has won all 9 of them. Mm-hmm. One of them, was in no contest because he popped for weed, but I don't know. He's good. I mean, he can folk style wrestle, he can freestyle wrestle, he can Greco-Roman wrestle. So I mean, and beyond that, he's a damn good MMA wrestler. Like, he will set up his takedowns, he will strike in and out of transitions. We saw that when he fought Dantas. I mean, he was kneeing Dantas in the face. Like, what is Joe Warren doing? Throwing knees to the face and cartwheel kicks, and you know what I mean? He's an exciting fighter. This is a very, very tough one for me. I feel like sometimes in MMA we'll see guys who are like super awesome collegiate wrestlers. It's almost like their first big step up is against other accredited wrestlers. And like Pat Cummins, he came in and fought DC. Tony Johnson came in and fought DC. Chris Honeycutt fought Paul Bradley. Frankie Saenz, Uriah Faber. So I kind of feel like, this might be one of those times where, Caldwell's the hot prospect and probably a huge favorite, but I don't see him finishing Warren with strikes, and I don't see him submitting Warren on the ground, and Joe Warren does not lose decisions. So I think Joe Warren has some unfinished business with Marcos Galvão, and I think he's gonna fight him again after he beats Caldwell. So I'm gonna go Joe Warren by decision.
All right, Vic, what are your thoughts?
All right. Well, I do think that there's something very strange with Joe Warren because I don't know. Quiet. My turn to speak. I'm not sure if he's doing this camp over at Jackson Winklejohn again. He's had a bit of success working with them. Although I am very disappointed with that loss to Galvão, not because of the fact that he lost to an experienced fighter who's very well versed in submissions, but the fact that he very realistically could have escaped that leg lock or that knee bar. Bug, come on, what are you doing here? Take this, here. quiet. He could have done it, but he panicked. He sat on it for a second, and he ended up getting hurt with it. But hey, that's all in the past right there. I think that against a guy like Darrion Caldwell, who is young and energetic and runs a really good pace, he shows a pretty good amount of composure all the way back from his legacy fights at the very beginning of his career. He has shown a lot of maturity for a guy his age and for a guy who's been doing MMA for as short a time as he has. He's got wins against Rafael Silva and Sean Bunch, which Eddie mentioned. Pretty good wins for you to have when you're, again, inexperienced as relatively inexperienced. And we're taking out a guy like Joe Warren who, quiet. You're taking out a guy who has only one knockout. He doesn't have that many finishes on his record, but he's got wins against Patricio Pitbull, Georgie Karahanian. He knocked out Joe Soto. He beat Eduardo Dantas and L.C. Davis. Like, he's really beaten some very solid quality names, and I don't think Caldwell. I don't know how well he'd do against any of those names, not to bring in too much of the MMA math right now, but I really think that edge and the experience, that and the fact that Joe Warren's got that dad strength, which I never count that out. I think he does have an advantage in the strength department. I think he's just got that IQ, being able to cut the corner, being able to keep a guy down and knowing when to pepper a guy with punches in order to pass and progress and to keep that ground dominance going. I really want to see Darrion Caldwell do well. I think he's got a very bright future in the sport. I think he's got the potential not just to be a champion, but to be something really, really exciting. Problem is, I just don't think this is going to be the day. I think Joe Warren certainly, despite his age, despite the fact that he's had some terrible losses, I really heavily have to go with him. My brain just has to, because of all the seriously, dude? Seriously? Because of everything that he brings to the table. So I'm certainly going to say Joe Warren is a safe bet on this.
Well, I got to agree. I mean, I don't know about safe, but I got to go with Joe Warren just because Caldwell, the core of Caldwell's game is still out wrestling people. Like, when you strip out all the flash and all the, athleticism he has, the core thing he still does round after round is get guys down and out wrestle them. And does he do that to Joe Warren? Maybe. Doesn't seem that likely.
I think, will he get him down? Absolutely. But so has everybody that's ever fought Joe Warren.
Yeah,
Everyone
does he keep him down and out wrestle him?
No way.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
And that's the problem for me, is that I don't think Caldwell can catch him out well enough. And Joe Warren, at this point, he strikes at a high pace. He wrestles well. He has learned all the little tricks that go with winning rounds in MMA, and he does it consistently. So the thing where this becomes interesting is the odds. And Darrion Caldwell is a large favorite in the odds.
Oh, wow.
He is at minus 360 to minus 435.
What?
And Joe Warren, the underdog, plus 335 down to plus 240.
Fuck that. Dude, put the college fund on Joe. Fuck is who's coming up with this nonsense? Man. Wow, damn.
This is an interesting fight because those odds are they're all on Caldwell, and I believe they've only been getting higher. They started at minus 270, and they have just been dropping to minus 401 now.
That is amazing.
I know Caldwell is a lot larger than Joe Warren.
Yeah.
But and Caldwell can scramble. He can scramble his ass off. But the issue with that is so can Joe Warren. And not only can Joe Warren scramble, but he strikes in and out of those scrambles.
Yeah.
So,
let's also remember, that's a 3-rounder.
I really don't understand why the odds are split as heavily as they are, and I gotta agree with you guys. I'm going with Warren. I'm also not. I don't put money on any of this, so understand when I see a large underdog, I'm like, wow, that's an awesome bet. I'm not betting, but Joe Warren here, I feel like he has. I feel like this is a very realistic setback fight for Darrion Caldwell.
Yeah. And I mean, if I make my own odds for these fights as I study them. I don't even look at the odds because I don't want it to skew my judgment at all. But I see this as Joe Warren minus 120, Caldwell plus 110. I think that's where this should be. Anything else is a travesty and a mismatch, and someone's going to lose some money and win some money on this one.
I would say there's a very good chance bet on Joe Warren to be had there. Unfortunately, there are no prop bets, but oh well.
There should be a prop bet for over and under rounds, right?
Yeah, but that's a meaningless one in this case.
That's not gonna work.
There are no good prop bets, I should say. Anyway, on that note, Vic, you said you had some closing words for us because that's our main event.
Just a minor thing here. We've got just remember we got a lot of MMA coming. We've got Invicta coming up. What is it, next week or the week after? Next week. We've got RFA 36 tomorrow, as well as Titan 37. They're finally back after their hiatus. KSW is going to be next week. That should be a very, very fun and exciting card.
KSW is this week, actually.
Is it? Oh, I thought it was next. Oh, well, there you go. Thank you for the correction. That is something that's going to be happening. Also, speaking of a hiatus, the Just Roll podcast should be back soon, hopefully. Please give them a listen. Very, very good guys talking about some real interesting grappling stuff. And theslothReport.com. Once again, theslothReport.com. My very good friend Josh Vogel doing work, teaching you lazy savages how to grapple and do that shit right. And one last thing. The Not Guilty, No Way podcast. A friend of ours, Miriam Sadiq. She's a lawyer. She talks about some really funny stuff, and it should be really, really great. So, yeah, we got some fun stuff coming our way.
All right. Eddie, did you have anything you wanted to pimp out before I close this?
Yeah, I'll pimp out Link's Academy of Martial Arts. Go check them out if you're in the area. Gracie's Certified Training Center. Come choke some people out, or maybe even get choked yourself if you're into that whole sadomasochistic kind of scene. Outside of that, they have a Bellator coming up in Italy. Alessio Sakai is making a return for some reason, fighting Brett Rogers. Or not Brett Rogers, what's his name?
I was going to say, shit, Brett Rogers, no!
Brett Rogers. Brian Rogers, there we go.
Brian Rogers, okay.
I'll pay to see either one, I don't care.
But, yeah, outside of that, just give us likes, Twitter, comment.
All right, this has been at The Zane Simon. You can find me on Twitter. Vic M. Rodriguez on Twitter. The Eddie Mercado on Twitter. All of us at Bloody Elbow. Like, that's a thumbs up. Subscribe to MMANation.com. It's DOTCOM over on YouTube. Get all our videos that way. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.